Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. A new project. Got through all my Christmas stuff. So in a previous project, my lilac bowl, I had to learn the process on how to mill out and make slabs using my bandsaw. So I actually figured out how to do that process on this piece of wood. Just an old piece of apple wood, just a limb that somebody gave me, and it's been laying around the shop since that project. So I was looking at it the other day. What can I do with this? So look at this thing, milled out, and I got 6 pieces of this. I also have not done a resin project in a while, so I'm trying to figure out how can I use this and incorporate some resin. Maybe separate these out a little bit. Incorporate a resin, maybe incorporate a light into it. I don't know. Let's see what I can do with this. So hopefully this thing will work. See you on the other side. I started on this project just sealing all of the apple wood pieces, just with some wood hardener, just to be able to seal all the moisture in so it didn't leak into the resin. Next up was to create the spacers to go between all of the pieces of apple, and I just using CA glue with some clamps. Next up was to flatten off one end of the apple wood and then attach it to a waste block so that I can mount it on the lathe much easier. For this project, I created my old mold using a piece of corrugated plastic. So I had to measure it out and make sure it was actually going to wrap around all the way. And then using a high temperature hot glue gun, made sure it was all nice and thick and sealed in. Probably used way more glue than I needed to, but I'd rather use too much than not enough, because I've done projects where the resin just went everywhere because it found a little tiny hole. After trying to do all the calculations, I realized I'm going to need the entire bottle of resin. One thing I did off camera was to cut off the top of it about a ½ an inch, because otherwise it wasn't going to fit in the pressure pot. Of course, glove up when you're using resin. So mixing the part A, just dumped the whole bottle, took forever. Part A is usually a little thicker. And then I wanted to give her a little bit of shine, a little shimmer, so I use this Eco-Epoxy white metallic powder. And then the part B, much thinner, but you can see how much I ended up using, and then mix for several minutes. You needed a much thicker stick in order to actually mix it correctly. And started pouring. There wasn't much space to actually pour down to the side, so I kind of had to just dump it on the top, let it pour in. So I was pouring a little bit, let it wait, pour a little bit, let it wait. And it almost filled up to the top, even with the entire full bottles of resin. Didn't quite reach the top, so I miscalculated just a little bit. And into the pressure pot at about 30 to 40 psi. I usually just throw it in overnight. Just give it usually at least a couple hours, but I usually go overnight. and then come back and check in the morning on my way out the door to work. Big thing I want to check is how many bubbles showed up. And initial inspection, there really wasn't any bubbles that I could see. So then I had to try and demold this thing, and this just took forever. Chopped off about the top inch just so I could have a more level stock, and attached the faceplate for the lathe. So once I started turning, there was chunks of resin flying off. It's one of the problems with resin is it comes off in chunks until you get down to a smoother. It was actually hitting my hand really hard, the backside of my hand. Very painful, actually. So I was trying to get more and more of the mold off, so I had to grab some pliers, rip some more of that plastic off. I was actually bleeding at one point because of the chunks flying off. So I did throw on a glove on my left hand. I don't recommend that. Safety tip: it is very dangerous to turn with a glove. If it caught in the lathe, my hand would get ripped off. So I don't ever recommend doing that. But I wanted my hand to stop bleeding or stop getting hit by resin chunks. The goal on this project was simply to get this blank to a round cylinder. Took quite a while just to try and get it one even and two so there wasn't any tear outs or chunks in it. So once I had it all nice and smooth, it was just down to the sanding. Started with 80 grit just to try and get it smooth and even, and then went through 150, 220, 350, 400, 600, and then some sanding sealer. While I was putting the sanding sealer on, did have a great aha moment of when everything becomes suddenly clear. The shimmery stuff that I put into the resin finally showed through, and actually looks really cool, other than just being kind of dark. So you can see it's semi-transparent in some sections, but you can see kind of the swirls going through it, and the lines, of course, in the back, and there's hardly any bubbles in there at all. So I originally took this off the lathe because I was going to cut the ends of it off on the bandsaw. But then I ended up actually putting it back on the lathe using the larger chuck teeth, and then flattened out the one end, got it all nice and sanded down, put the sanding sealer on it. And then very carefully had to use the parting tool to try and get it cut off, and then I unchucked it and cut that end off on the bandsaw. So my original idea on this project was create this resin cylinder thing so it could see some light and actually like create a nightlight with it. So here's my test of trying to put on some LEDs, and you can see through it and the light's coming through, but it's not really glowing like I really wanted it to, and you can't see other than just seeing the light through it. It doesn't actually show up, so it wouldn't really work as a nightlight, so I got to come up with plan B. Alright, I'm back with a new plan. So, came up looking at this thing, the LED strips weren't going to work, so I found this puck LED light. Almost makes me look like Iron Man. So I'm going to clamp it here. I'm going to hollow out the bottom, try and get this light to fit in here. Maybe hopefully it'll look cooler than that. We'll see.